push open the door to the candy shop, a little bell tinkling overhead. The air is thick with a syrupy sweetness that makes my head spin. Shelves upon shelves of glass jars line the walls, each filled with what looks like ordinary candy. But I know better. This is no ordinary candy shop. "Welcome," says the shopkeeper, a wizened old woman with twinkling eyes. "What flavor of experience are you looking for today?" I hesitate, overwhelmed by the options. "I'm not sure," I admit. "I've never been to a Qualia shop before." She smiles knowingly. "Ah, a first-timer. Well, why don't we start with something simple? How about tasting the color blue?" I nod eagerly, and she reaches for a jar filled with what look like blue raspberry candies. But when she hands me one, it's completely colorless and transparent. "Go on," she urges. "Give it a try." I pop the candy into my mouth, and suddenly my world explodes with blueness. Not just the color blue, but the very essence of blueness. It's cool and calm, vast like the ocean and endless like the sky. I taste depths and shallows, cerulean and azure, cobalt and navy. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced before. When the sensation fades, I'm left breathless. "That was incredible," I manage to say. The shopkeeper nods. "Qualia are funny things, aren't they? We all see blue, but do we all experience it the same way? That candy lets you taste the very essence of blueness." I'm intrigued now. "What else do you have?" She gestures to the shelves. "Oh, all sorts. We've got the feeling of déjà vu, the smell of nostalgia, the sound of silence. You name it, we've probably got a candy for it." My eyes scan the jars, each labeled with increasingly abstract concepts. "What's this one?" I ask, pointing to a jar filled with what look like red-hot candies. "Ah," she says with a mischievous glint in her eye, "that's a tricky one. It's the taste of the letter A." I blink in surprise. "You can taste letters?" She shrugs. "Why not? Every experience is just a qualia, a subjective, conscious experience. Who's to say we can't experience the essence of a letter?" Curiosity gets the better of me. "Can I try it?" She hands me a candy, and I pop it into my mouth without hesitation. Immediately I'm hit with a sharp, angular sensation. It's not quite a taste, not quite a feeling, but something in between. It's the pointiness of the letter's shape, the openness of its sound, the primacy of its position in the alphabet. It's A-ness distilled into its purest form. As the sensation fades, I'm left pondering the nature of experience itself. How is it that I can taste a letter? What does it mean to experience the essence of something that isn't typically associated with sensory input? Fascinating, isn't it? The shopkeeper says, interrupting my thoughts. Qualia are the building blocks of consciousness, the raw feel of experience, but they're also deeply mysterious. How can we ever know if your experience of A-ness is the same as mine? I nod, still trying to wrap my head around it. It's like I knew what A was before, but now I feel like I truly understand it on a deeper level. "Exactly," she says. "That's the power of Qualia. They let us experience the ineffable, to know things in a way that goes beyond mere knowledge." My eyes are drawn to another jar, this one filled with what look like ordinary white mints. "What's this one?" I ask. "Oh, that's a special one," she says with a smile. "It's the feeling of realizing you're dreaming while you're still in the dream." I raise an eyebrow, but I'm not dreaming right now. She just winks at me. "Are you sure about that?" I hesitate for a moment before taking the candy. As soon as it dissolves on my tongue, reality seems to shift. The edges of my vision blur, and I'm filled with a strange sense of liberation. I can feel the boundaries of what's possible expanding. For a brief moment, I understand that none of this is real, that I am the architect of my own experience. And then, just as quickly, the feeling fades, leaving me disoriented and questioning everything. "Whoa!" I say, steadying myself against the counter. "That was intense." The shopkeeper nods sympathetically. "Qualia can be overwhelming sometimes. They force us to confront the subjective nature of our experience. Everything you think you know about the world is filtered through your own consciousness. Who's to say what's really real? I ponder this as I look around the shop with new eyes. Each jar now seems to hold infinite possibilities, doorways to experiences I can barely imagine. What about that one? I ask, pointing to a jar filled with what looked like black licorice candies. Ah, she says, her voice taking on a note of caution. That's the experience of synesthesia. It allows you to briefly experience the blending of senses, but I must warn you, it can be quite disorienting. Intrigued, I hold out my hand. She gives me a candy, which I quickly pop into my mouth. Suddenly the world transforms. I can taste the colors of the room, each one a unique flavor dancing on my tongue. The sound of the bell over the door becomes a shimmering blue ribbon in my vision. The scent of sugar in the air turns into a soft melody in my ears. It's beautiful and overwhelming, a sensory overload that leaves me reeling. As the effect wears off, I find myself gripping the counter for support. That was intense, I managed to say. The shopkeeper nods knowingly. Qualia aren't just about individual sensations. They're about how our brain integrates and interprets those sensations. Synesthesia shows us how malleable our perception really is. I'm starting to understand now. Each of these candies isn't just giving me a new sensation. They're expanding my understanding of what it means to experience anything at all. My gaze falls on a jar filled with what look like red cinnamon candies. What about those? I ask. The shopkeeper's eyes twinkle. Ah, those are special. They let you taste the color red. I furrow my brow. But I've already seen the color red. How is this different? She shakes her head. Seeing red and tasting redness are two very different things. This candy lets you experience the quale of red directly, without the intermediary of your eyes. Intrigued, I take a candy. As soon as it touches my tongue, I'm overwhelmed by redness. It's not just the color, but the very essence of red. It's passion and anger, love and danger. It's the heat of fire and the sweetness of a ripe strawberry. It's every association I've ever had with the color red, distilled into a pure sensation. As the feeling fades, I'm left in awe. I never realized red was so complex. The shopkeeper nods. Every qualia is like that. Rich, multifaceted, impossible to fully describe in words. That's why they're so fascinating. They're the raw stuff of experience, the building blocks of consciousness. I look around the shop with new appreciation. Each jar now seems to hold not just a sensation, but a key to understanding the nature of experience itself. What's the strangest qualia you have? I ask, curious about the limits of this peculiar candy. She thinks for a moment, then reaches for a jar on a high shelf. The candies inside look completely ordinary, like plain white mints. These, she says, let you experience the qualia of nothingness. I blink in surprise. Nothingness. How can you experience nothing? She smiles mysteriously. Why don't you find out? Hesitantly, I take the candy. As soon as it dissolves on my tongue, everything stops. It's not darkness or silence or emptiness. It's the complete absence of any sensation at all. For a brief moment, I cease to exist as an experiencing being. There's no me, no candy shop, no anything, just nothingness. When I come back to myself, I'm gasping for air, my heart racing. I don't even know how to describe it, I stammer. The shopkeeper nods understandingly. That's the thing about qualia. They're inherently subjective, impossible to fully communicate. I could give that same candy to 100 different people, and they might all experience nothingness differently. I'm starting to grasp the true depth of what qualia mean. They're not just sensations or experiences, but the very fabric of consciousness itself. Each candy in this shop is a window into the nature of subjective experience, a tool for exploring the boundaries of what it means to be aware. I have one more question, I say, my mind reeling with possibilities. Do you have a candy that lets you experience everything? The shopkeeper's eyes widen slightly. Ah, you're a curious one, aren't you? As a matter of fact, we do. But I must warn you, it's not for the faint of heart. Experiencing all qualia simultaneously can be overwhelming. Despite her warning, or perhaps because of it, I find myself nodding eagerly. I want to try it. She hesitates for a moment, then reaches under the counter and pulls out a small iridescent candy that seems to shift and change as I look at it. "Here you are," she says solemnly, "the experience of all experiences." With only slight hesitation, I pop the candy into my mouth. For a split second, nothing happens. Then suddenly I am everything and everyone. I experience every color, every sound, every texture, every emotion all at once. I am the vastness of the cosmos in the tiniest subatomic particle. I am every person who has ever lived, and every possible person who could ever exist. I am every thought, every feeling, every qualia that has ever been, or could ever be. It's beautiful and terrifying, ecstatic and agonizing. It's too much for any one consciousness to handle. Just when I think I'm about to lose myself entirely in the infinity of experience, it stops. I find myself back in the candy shop, on my knees, tears streaming down my face. The shopkeeper is looking at me with a mix of concern and understanding. "Are you all right?" she asks gently. I nod, unable to speak for a moment. When I finally find my voice, it's shaky. I think I understand now. Qualia aren't just parts of experience, they are experience. Consciousness itself is just qualia all the way down. She smiles warmly. "You're starting to get it. Qualia are mysterious, ineffable, and utterly fundamental to what it means to be conscious. They're the reason why there's something it's like to be you, to be anything at all." As I stand up on shaky legs, I look around the shop one last time. Each jar now seems to hold not just a flavor or a sensation, but a piece of the puzzle of consciousness itself. I realize that I've only scratched the surface of what qualia really mean. "Thank you," I say to the shopkeeper. "This has been eye-opening, doesn't even begin to cover it." She nods knowingly. That's the beauty of qualia. They open our eyes to the wonder of experience itself. Just remember, the exploration never really ends. There's always more to taste, more to feel, more to experience. As I turn to leave, my hand on the door, I pause. "One last thing," I say. "Do you have a candy that lets you taste the letter red?" She laughs, a sound like tinkling bells. "Oh my dear, that's not a candy. That's the journey you've just begun." I step out of the shop, the little bell ringing behind me. The world seems different now, richer somehow. Every sight, every sound, every sensation is a qualia, a unique subjective experience that makes up the tapestry of consciousness. And somewhere out there, I know, is the ineffable taste of the letter red, waiting to be experienced.